Welcome to Amsterdam. For some of you, this is where you're from. And I would like to thank those of you from this country who were interested enough in our work to invite us to come here. It is a privilege to come and bring the freedom teachings your way, and I hope you enjoy the workshop. Now, if you've probably heard that most workshops, especially over the last 5 years, have been running on something called guardian time, which is like insanity time where clocks go out the window, because all of the information that we bring in comes in on what is called a live chelantic wave, which means I don't have the material before the fact. I get it on site. This workshop, thankfully, is going to be run different because there are a lot of people from this area who are transmuting back and forth each evening. We've been asked, and we asked the beloveds, if we could please have something that resembled a normal time schedule for a workshop for at least once in 5 years. And they said yes. They showed us the information that we needed. We just had what is called 12 Tribes 8 class, the 8th class of the 12 Tribes series, right before we left. We had it over this past weekend, and then we were on a plane Tuesday to come here. So the information that was given there, it was the information that was going in this workshop also. So it was just kind of an extenuation. So we're going to do our best to run on a natural functional schedule that has to do with, I believe we'll have a morning session that runs from 10 a.m. till 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock till 2 will be a lunch, and then 2 till 5, or coffee break, or lunch, whatever. And then 2 till 5:30 will be the second block. And then dinner is fixed at this hotel. We have no control over it, and it goes in 2 seatings, I guess because there's so many people, they can't do them all at once. And one is at 5:30 to 6:30, the other is 6:30 to 7:30. So the dinner break will run from 5:30 to 7:30 to accommodate that. And then as an optional, not really part of program, but part of program for those who want to in the evening at 8 o'clock, there will be a meditation journey run. So we're not running late into the night. So the people that need to be able to drive home will be able to do that. Because we were also told that there is about 50% new people at this workshop. So people who, we haven't done this in a long time. Most of the workshops in the States have evolved to the point where people have been with the work for quite a few years, and they're used to guardian time and that kind of thing. They're also familiar with the evolution of the work itself, which has been quite a journey as far as much information given over short periods of time and very detailed information. So what the beloveds, what the guardians have done with this program is put together for the first time what is going to be the outline for the next book, which has to do with sequencing all the information that we have received, particularly since January of 2007, when major dispensations of information of a very important nature were given. Sequenced it in an easy format that even if you're just coming in, it will put a lot of pieces together for you so you won't feel lost like you might otherwise. It also will round out for all of us, including us and I, for the huge amount of information that we have been doing our best to play secretary to writing down since January of 2007. It is also giving a rounded perspective for us as well. So the people that have been here, that have come from America and from other parts of Europe, that have been with the work for a while, I think you will appreciate also the way this material is strung together. If things go well with the flow of the material, this particular this weekend will actually become a facilitator's training course where facilitators who want to teach this information to cold audiences out there will be able to, we'll put together a booklet to go with it of how to use this CD set or this DVD set in order to run facilitators courses. So this is a whole new format that we're following, and I'm grateful because Az and I are really, the last few workshops especially, we've not slept. There's been no time to sleep. We've been giving like the evening session starting at midnight and getting done at breakfast and then going into transmission for the next days. So this is going to be a new and hopefully much more pleasant journey of learning for all of us because of the new format. And I figure if it can be done once, it can be done again. So hopefully it's evolving to a higher order of how we can get this information out to the public. What we have at the moment is, I'm going to sit down for a little bit of this. What we have at the moment, we are waiting for a Mylar to come that is a simple itinerary that gives you an idea of what this program is about, because we didn't know what this program was going to be about until about 2 hours ago when we were given the itinerary. That's why we knew it was going to be, a roundup and presenting of some of the information that we had before, kind of like Science and Spirituality of Creation. But not that. It's almost like installment 2, the really big stuff. Right? Had no idea, didn't know what the sequence was or anything. But we just received the itinerary, which means titles of things. And that is, at the moment, somebody is having it printed for us, so we have a Mylar of it. We'll also try to have you to have a copy of it by morning. But what we'll tell you in the meantime is that the title, let me find it in my scribbled notes, so I'll work off my scribbled notes until the typeset version that's typed up for us as a master, until that comes back from being Mylar printed. The title is called, let me find it in here, let me see. Okay, here we go. The title is called Legacy of the Lost, Freedoms of the Found. The Atlantean Legacy, Milky Way Mysteries, Hall of Records, and the Jesus Code. Yeah, it's big stuff. Very, very intense information it shows a flow of some of the things we've been learning in the last year that have to do with the eternal creation story, the never-ending story. And that is the title of the first part that we will go into tomorrow. The first session will be the seeds of creation and the never-ending story. And then we are moving into, progressively and rapidly, into information that some of which we only just learned over the weekend in the last tribes class. And this was absolutely fascinating information that has to do with the M31 galaxy, which is the Andromeda galaxy. In the Andromeda constellation, it isn't the Andromeda constellation, it is the M31 galaxy within the Andromeda constellation, and what our relationship in the Milky Way galaxy and on Earth is to that particular galaxy. That is also connected, believe it or not, to information that, you know how in recent years there's been the Da Vinci Code and those kind of things. Well, there is a story that goes along with that. That was basically a tracing of the Jeshua 9 lines, the Da Vinci Code. There is also the Jesus Code, or the Jeshua 12 Code. It's really called, excuse me. Yes, please. That would be nice. Thank you. We've got the Mylar. All right. So, anyway, the Jeshua Code, or the Jesus Code, we're just beginning. We started in Virginia Beach in the September workshop. We got a little bit more in the last tribes class, and we're getting more this time, a lot more this time, on the Jeshua 12, or the Jesus lineage from the real Jesus story, and what that has to do, believe it or not, with Amsterdam. And we had no idea why we needed to be in Amsterdam, or why we needed to go there. But it was like, sure, sounds like a lovely place. I've heard it's really pretty. I'd like to see it. So sure, we'll go. But they never said, oh, it's a Stargate, or it's a this or that. There are still things that are still in the secrets of Amsterdam. But all of these tie into the Jeshua Code and a particular lineage that is still on this planet, that are direct descendants of Jeshua 12. There is, let's say, a tribe of them that are from this area specifically. And it is because of this that we were asked by the beloveds to come, and interestingly invited by people that were interested in the work to do that. So we'll be finding out some things together that we don't know all of yet, but we'll also be covering some other things. When this particular one came through, if you're new to the work and you might not know what it refers to, it probably won't seem as funny to you if you do know the work. And probably can figure out what it refers to. But down here in Sunday, we have this. All right, up here we deal with first the seeds of creation, the never-ending story. This is happy stuff. All right, this tells you all sorts of fascinating things that I'll talk about in a minute when we get into the orientation, part of the orientation. And down here we've got the seeds of suffering and the final ending story. This is where we get into Milky Way Mysteries, the bloom of doom. This is what the beloveds called it, a.k.a. otherwise known as the Daisy of Death. Right? That's what I said. I burst out laughing when it came through. You guys are a roar. and the Prosiac matrix. This section, more than anything, and we are really tired of the glooby stuff. Honestly, I don't even want to teach it anymore. And we've had to teach information about the history that has happened here because the history is continuing. There are things happening on this planet that are not natural and that are causing harm to people now, just as they did in the past. We had, at certain points, had to progressively reveal about the Daisy of Death paradigm and how it's being taught and what it refers to. And I'm really tired of having to teach that information. And what's nice about this particular piece of information that has to do with the Milky Way Mysteries and the Prosiac matrix, this will put the entire thing into a context where all of the bits and pieces we've learned about something called the beast and black hole technologies from Atlantis and all of that, where you'll see where it fits into a very large story. And what's nice is when we get down to the second part of this, his story, her story, and reflections of eternal creation. First part is a return to innocence. This has to do with the Hall of Records, Akashic Memory, the seven sons of the seven sons, which has to do with Amsterdam, and the Jesus Code. That's his story. And then we have the Ancient Secrets of Amsterdam, White Buffalo Woman, and the Gift of Aquiel. And this also has to do with Amsterdam. These two things, this is her story, the story of White Buffalo Woman, and what in the world they have to do with anything, and what they have to do with Amsterdam, and what they have to do with the healing that we are now being presented with, the potential for healing we are now being presented with on this planet. Our work has gone we started publicly in 2000. The books were released, I believe, at the end of 1999, the Voyager series books, and thought Voyagers 2 is big and heavy. The information we've received since that time could fill 5 more of those with no problem. There's just no time to write them down at the moment. But we've been literally living a very strange story. The people who have followed the work and become involved in it and learned more about what's taking place on this planet, including Az and I and Mac as speakers, that we've progressed through all sorts of things, from sometimes seeming like from the sublime to the ridiculous, to stuff that you'd really just rather not know about, as far as the black hole technologies and all that. But what I'd like to talk about to start this workshop set with, it's called Through the Looking Glass: Religion, Science, and the Mirror of Creation. Now, this has to do with an orientation to the work itself and to looking at the work. Because if you've been with us for a while, it can almost feel like somewhere back between 2000 and now, you got run over by a very fast-moving train. And you just kind of just watch the next car go by and, try to remember what color it was. Because the next piece is coming in at high speed. So if it affects any of you that have been with us for a while that way, it affects us that way too. Where if anybody asked me right now to teach Cathar 1, I would have to go back and read the whole book again, because we've moved so far, and building on that platform have moved so far forward. I couldn't remember half of the terms that go in the Cathar 1 book because we have so many other terms that have come so far. What I want to talk about is the work itself in relation to something called ideological disempowerment and distorted image of self and source. And this has to do with something that is almost taken for granted as such a natural condition on this planet that nobody ever even thinks about it or stops to think about it. Now, if you met a child, or even like an adult that had been a child, who was fed lies and distorted hateful ideas toward another group, say what you see sometimes in the Middle East and their conflicts, where they're taught from tinyhood to hate others, of a different kind, and those kind of things. They are taught that ideas about themselves in relation to a god, or in the relation to a no god, whichever it is. But if you take a child with an innocent mind that is still, it is a being from somewhere else that came in, because you're somebody before you come into a baby body. But once you're in a baby body, you have this personality level, this ego level of self that develops, and it is hugely dependent on nurture. And if you are nurtured with false ideas and ideas of limitation, ideas that are unkind or are unhealthy, and you have come to recognize those ideas as truths because they were taught to you by the only caregivers you had, you will actually find that a child that was raised in that environment has a very difficult time letting go of those ideas, even if they're presented with new ones that are healthier and that would make life feel better if they actually thought that these things were real instead of those things. But almost out of an allegiance to a parent figure or a nurturing figure, to let go of ideas, even if they're harmful from the past, is very difficult for a child. And most often what happens are the sins of the father or mother are passed down and down and down, because the child will accept the same distorted belief systems as the parents had, and they will pass that on to their children and to their children. When you look at a child that has been fed some really unhelpful ideas about itself, such as that death is a natural condition, disease is a natural condition, such as God is a wrathful God and will punish you if you don't do A, B, C, and D. If you have a child that is taught those things and alongside it taught that this group of people are the good people and that group of people are the bad people, are taught also that, oh, it's okay to, say, steal, or it's okay to murder in this context, or it's okay to do that. A child raised with those things eventually becomes an adult, and that adult has no sense of ethics by which to heal itself. And in fact, it will often attack the very paradigms that, if it would open to new ideas, could actually help it to heal the pain that those ideas caused it in the first place. I personally have a situation like this, where I have a son that was, I am a walk-in, by the way, for those of you who don't know, and the walk-out, we did conscious walk-in, walk-out. Her name was Katie. The walk-out, she was part of my soul group, and we had this agreement to do this. When we left, she had been married a few times and had some children, and she loved her children very much, and I had agreed to take over being the mom figure with the children. And everything had worked out well with the two girls, and there's a boy, and the boy was raised by his father. The boy was raised by his father because Katie had to flee from his father because she was terrified of him. Because he was not physically abusive. He threatened to invoke friends who made cars and people disappear and have her killed and those kind of things. It was a very bad situation to be in. At the time, she was home writing the books. She had like part-time jobs trying to support her kids. She had no support from the kids. And she had an opportunity to move to New Jersey. She asked the boy, he was about 8 at that time, if he wanted to come, but he wouldn't be able to, she wouldn't be able to bring him up for the weekend visits with his father. And the child chose at the time to go with his father because Daddy was more fun, because he'd take him for rides on his bicycle and that kind of stuff since he was small. And the child didn't like to go to school at the time. He had, I think, an ADD problem, and we were trying to help him with that. He was not easy in that regard, but he was loved very much. But when he chose to go with his father, we let that happen. Well, progressively, we tried to keep visitation, but it was extremely hostile with the father. Because of that, the father would often put the child in and try to make him pick. Right? He'd say, oh, well, the first thing the child ever said, for example, was, Daddy said Mommy's a whore. Right? That's the first words Katie ever heard from her child when he was like 2 or just beginning to speak. The man was very twisted. His father was just very twisted, mind-wise. She never blamed him. She realized he was just sick, but she realized she couldn't stay married to someone like that. She tried to protect her son from that, but he had not done anything to harm the child, so there was no grounds to take the child away. When the child went to stay at age 8 with the father, by the time I believe he was 10, he was put in the Milton Hershey School because the father was declared unfit. And we would have loved to have gone and taken him at that point, but instead we ended up signing papers to let him go because there was still the fact that the father had primary legal custody, which did not have to be signed over to have him put in the school, because it was a private school for boys that was set up in Pennsylvania to give boys kind of a last chance, a last chance. I think it might be for girls now too. Yeah, I think it's girls too. It's run by the Hershey Bar family, the people who created the Hershey bars in America. Well, the child went there, and we tried very hard to get him out. We tried to bring him, to bring him on trips. He got very heavily indoctrinated into Christianity in a very rigid way at the school, where all of a sudden we were evil because we were teaching metaphysics. And he continually had visits with his father, to the point where the father told him all sorts of lies that were not true whatsoever. The child turned on his father as well, because his father was drunk all the time and, did things that upset him. But he also taught him from the time he was about 4 how to steal. He'd teach him to go into stores and how to shoplift and all those kind of things. So this is what the kid was dealing with, is his influence. At this point, he is an adult. The ideas that he was fed were poison. He is an adult that has been told a lie by his father that his mother abandoned him and didn't love him. He had all sorts of lies told to him about his mother, so he would really hate his mother. Why? So he'd like his father. This is how his father worked things. The child's mind was poisoned in that way. The child was told that mother was evil, and she talked to the devil, because we teach Christian metaphysics. All sorts of things. Right now, he is vicious, actually. He is a vicious person. I brought that personal story in because it was a good place. It was actually through trying to understand what had taken place there with this child who is loved. But at this point, we won't invite him to our house because I'm afraid he'd burn it down or something. I mean, he's dangerous at this point. But it was heartbreaking to watch that happen to a child, even if you were a walk-in into a body that its mother had walked out. His mother would have been dead if I hadn't walked in. So he would have lost mom either way, but at least this way, mom's body and face is still walking around. But that was where I really started to, with all of the things of technical spiritual things that we know about so far and we've been taught that are wonderful and freeing, say, what do you do with that? How do you help to heal that? That mind has been so poisoned from the time it was in diapers that it does not want to hear anything the one it was poisoned against has to say. I realized the danger level of dealing with that child now grown into a man. And I started to realize, my God, he was given a false self-image. He was given a false self-image that told him he was worthless, that told him he wasn't loved by his mother, that told him he wasn't good enough or even loved enough by his father. He has all these deep pains that turned into rage, that turned into hatred. And so we understand him in regard to that. And then it dawned on me, look at the false images of self that this race has been raised under since Atlantis. First of all, we don't even remember Atlantis existed. Second of all, what have we been taught to actually believe, and what has that done to ourselves? If we look at how violent parts of this world can be, we can trace that violence back to the seed ideas that people were raised with, that told them it was okay to do this and that, and not okay to do the other thing. So what I wanted to talk about in this orientation was about this distorted image of self, the mirror of creation. We have, at this point in contemporary evolution, a whole set of ideologies that came up from the point of Atlantis. Atlantis is like the mysterious past that disappeared and probably didn't exist in most people's minds. So we're not taught much about the fact that it might have even existed, because that's considered not important. But we've been taught some very interesting things, both about science and religion. First of all, we're taught that they're not compatible. We're taught that the religions tend to teach us that there's a God of this name or this order and insists you do these things, or it has a temper tantrum. We're taught of jealous, angry gods that punish and, fire and brimstone and all of this kind of thing. And also that if you do what they want you to, that they will reward you and take you to heaven or be good to you. So we have the creationism model, that yes, there is an intelligent God up there and he did this, that, or the other thing and tells you that you have to do this. And if you're lucky, once you get out of here, hopefully there will be an afterlife and you can go meet that God. Because the big thing that makes God popular is it was also promoted right along next to the devil. And every horrible thing that could be imagined was attributed to the devil. So of course you're going to want to talk to God instead. And if you only got a choice between the two, well, that's where science came in. There was more than one choice between the two. Science has evolved in a fascinating way. And it has evolved in a way where, first of all, if you go back to its core ideas, it has told us that, A, we evolved probably from apes. There's some controversy over that now, finally. And even if we didn't evolve from apes, all of it evolved from pond scum, and all of that evolved from a collision and big bang that just so happened to happen once upon a time somewhere out there that formed the singular universe. And therefore, existence exists because of chaos. It exists in an ordered structure. It seems to have ordered itself, but nobody created it. It just evolved from atoms colliding or elements colliding and forming new things, which means it has no intrinsic purpose because creation was an accident. It was therefore not created by anybody on purpose for any particular reason. Now, if you're taught that, evolutionism, and you've evolved from that point of whatever little dot of hydrogen you might have been once, and you've evolved to become pond scum, and evolved to become apes, and evolved to become what we call humans now, what sense of personal purpose are you going to have if the universe has none? If there was no purpose for which the universe was created on purpose, it's all a free-for-all. It means your life has no purpose either. Science teaches us that there probably isn't anything after you're dead, you're dead. Body's gone, you're gone. That consciousness is an aspect of the body, a product of the body mechanisms. And therefore, when the body is gone, consciousness is gone, you are gone. Which means not only do you have an existence that has no purpose, but you also have a very limited lifespan to enjoy that purposeless existence. So you have science over here with its evolutionism, and you have the creationists over here with their religions of various, notice this, competing, warring gods, right? We have Allahs and Jehovah's and Buddhas and all sorts of different gods by different names who have different agendas. That's an interesting fiasco of ideologies to be raised on. When we look at the damage that just some of those ideas alone have created here, we have a species that is the most intelligent, supposedly, in the universe, right? That is lost because it has no sense of self-purpose. It doesn't remember where it came from. It tries to fill its life with meaning by conquests on the outside, because deep down it is deeply in pain. Because if you are purposeless, it means why bother being? With all the pain and suffering that can be involved with us trying to evolve physically here, why bother if it doesn't mean anything anyway? So there's all sorts of compensation mechanisms that have developed in the human psyche because of these very sick ideas that we have been raised on progressively. The religions have not done much else except at least they gave us a hope of something before and something after, and something that will ease the misery of being in a purposeless universe. So there are all the different competing ideas about what God is, what God isn't. But one thing most of them have in common is they teach you you are insignificant by comparison. They teach you you are meant to be a subject of God, therefore dominated by an authoritarian God figure. If you're lucky, they teach you a little bit about, and God might love you if. These ideas are like being raised by a parent who is all-powerful, that only if you get straight A's on your report card will you be loved. And if you dare to get an F or two, you're actually kicked out and you live in the street, called hell. Right? The formation of the personality, which is different than the part of your consciousness that is the spirit that comes in and exists before your body is even formed. But the personality part of identity that develops here, once a spirit integrates itself into a new biological form, that is precious, because that personality, if it is allowed to evolve naturally with ideas that are in natural harmony with cosmic structure in the universe, it will naturally open and blend with its spirit. There will be no division between the understanding of itself as spirit and itself as a spirit focused in manifestation. And it will also have different genetic abilities because those doors between those two portions of consciousness, the doors to the atoms, are opened. We have not had the privilege of that kind of natural evolution here since the Atlantean drama was buried in the archives of legend. And we have been raised in a way that if everything changed and all of a sudden somebody from a wonderful universe where everything was still being done the right way and there was no disease and everybody was eternal and everybody got along happily, if they came down here and tried to bring us to a place like that, we wouldn't even know what to do, how to behave, how to think, how to feel. The healing, if we ever want to get to a place of that peace, that utopian vision that the versions of heaven promise us, there's a healing that we need to do in ourselves. And that healing is an ideological one. The part of ourselves, of our race, it's not just each individual, it is that, but it's also an entire race that was raised on what could very well be, and we choose to believe are, falsehoods. If the truth was that you were an eternal life form, that the angelic human form was indeed just that, all the powers we attribute to angels having, well, the gene code of humans had that. They were angelic humans. That would mean that, first of all, death was not an organic state of experience. The death of the physical body was not an organic state of experience. What? Well, if you don't die, where do you go? That's where ascension comes in. That's what real ascension was. Ascension is the ability to manifest and demanifest the matter form at will, because you have the spiritual mastery of understanding the natural mechanics by which the universe works. So, if you took an angelic human, wiped its memory, and then put it back where it was, but it doesn't remember how it got there, or who it is, and then you told it, you are lowly, you evolved from apes. You have no purpose. But God will love you anyway if you do this, 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 and this. And if not, you go to hell and the devil will eat you alive. It's like you're traumatized enough from the first part, which was, I think, but I can't remember. Did I remember who I was before? Did something happen where I don't remember who I am now? Or did I just never know who I was? That is what happened here. How that happened on this planet is a fascinating story. It happened by creating unnatural alterations in the electromagnetic fields of the planet. And science now is discovering that indeed the DNA is susceptible and can be damaged by various things, one of which is different types of radiation, like different types of solar radiation, another of which is electromagnetic spectrum. So if there is something that happened to the magnetic grids on this planet at any particular time, it could very well wipe out portions of the memory, mutate the DNA, which would change the biological holding ability for consciousness, which means the vessel that spirit should be able to use as the focus of consciousness becomes distorted. A distorted biological vessel creates a distorted image of self once the spirit does get part of itself in and can't turn around and look at the rest of itself and can't remember where it came from. So we are the children born of a lie. We are the children that have been raised on the lies of our fathers and mothers and the culture before us. I'm not talking about your father or mother particularly, because they were victimized by this as well. The big victimization took place during the Atlantean period, which ended in 9558 BC. There were many, many other things. Sometimes loss of memory can be a good thing, because there were a lot of things that the history records show actually did occur before that made Atlantis look small in the dramas that took place there. Where we're at right now, in our contemporary views of things, we have the scientific perspective, we have the religious perspective, and we have the more New Agey perspective that tries to put both of them together to some degree or another. But we don't have any verification that Atlantis existed. If it did, where is it? So it's still in the realms of myth. There's nothing to go back on in the past. So we kind of float around and just say, whatever is the common belief, you accept that. If you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are more religious than scientific, you tend to just adopt whatever the contemporary religious thing is that's surrounding you, and the same thing for the scientific mind. But what if all of these things that we've been taught are just not true, or are only partial truths? For example, with the religions that are on the planet today, we have taught before that there were 12 primary legions of the Christ. And that doesn't mean Christian. All right, Christ is K-R-Y-S-T, and it has to do with Kara-Yasa-Ta-Hala, and they are the first audible sound tones. And that's where the word Christ comes from in the first place. But we have taught that there were 12 legions, original legions of the Christ, that each had a piece of the cosmic knowledge to hold and be guardian of. And each one of those 12 created a legion of information and people who were the protectors and speakers of that. They were all speaking an element of the same thing, the same cosmic design, the same eternal truth. So on this planet, there were 12 original legions. Religions were the taking of the teachings of those 12 legions and using part of them and distorting the other parts to turn them into control dogmas. And God didn't do that. Some of ones who got called angels that aren't did a bit of that. And race lines here, controlling race lines here, that came up from Atlantis and from what are called the Atlantean king lines, who became the Illuminati lines. They used those original 12 legions, took bits of them, and then wove lies around them. So they would still have a feel. You could still feel what is called the encryption, which is an energy signature underneath the words, enough to reel you in, because you could feel, yeah, okay, God's real. I know some of this stuff. So you might feel that for whatever religious books you were taught, because some of it's still in there, and some of it's the truth. What is mixed in with the truth are where the lies were, and the lies were put there for a purpose, to create a self-image of a race. So first it wipes its memory, so it forgets who it was, what it came to do, what power it actually has, and forgets the fact that that race is a divine being, forgets the fact that everything is actually a divine being and a manifestation of a living God source, and then you give it a false idea of itself. Just like if you were, say you came into an incarnation with full memory and you knew that your name was Joe, and your mom and dad refused to call you Joe and said, I don't care if you're Joe, I'm going to call you Mary. You are Mary to me, and you have to be Mary. That is what happened to us, but we couldn't even remember Joe. So we adopted Mary, or whatever our name was, and whatever identity was given to us. Every time Joe or Mary goes off to school and, say, in kindergarten or whatever, has the teacher say, you're stupid, or you did that wrong, or you're bad, a new part of Joe or Mary understanding who they are comes into being. If you have that child person or a child identity being subjected to horrors, because there are many children who are abused physically, sexually, what does that do to the self-image? There's emotional abuse that we suffer all the time just because the societies around us are raised on emotionally abusing each other because they forgot the ways of the Christ. They put hate before love. They put acquisition before sharing. At this point, they're attempting to own a living body called the earth. At least the Native Americans and some of the other native peoples, the Aborigines and others, understand that you can't lay claim to the divine. It is of its own. It is an identity. The society is around us. We can look around and say, well, I guess everything must be okay. You know, this stuff that they talk about with this particular work paradigm that involves Atlantis and things that are still happening that are not good here from that period. Oh, that must be nonsense. There's a lot of people that like to look at it that way. And I say to them, look around you. And what do you see on TV that's showing you other parts of the world? What is happening in Africa? How many children die every day? What is happening in some of the other countries where you have dictatorships, where people are murdered and maimed for just speaking their truth to a neighbor who reported them? What is wrong with this place? If this is okay, I'd hate to see not okay. And if this isn't hell, I certainly don't want to see how worse this can get, because this can get worse than it is here. It doesn't mean it's hopeless. There's still plenty of hope. There are still plenty of really good people on this planet whose hearts are in the right place, but they've been fed on the lies of the father and mother. And they are the lies of the father and mother called the father Atlantis and the mother Lemuria. And they are the mother and father of this race, or the most recent contemporary one. And we are hybrid races. So there are many things we have been taught about ourselves that are just not true, and they've given us a false image of self. It's just as damaging as, say, a skinny girl who's maybe 14 and decides she's fat because she has been raised on Barbie dolls and all sorts of things that tell her that, a girl that size should be a size 2, and she finds herself a size 8, and she feels fat and horrible. And every time she looks in the mirror, she feels like she's 400 pounds when actually she's 120. And she gets a distorted image of self to the point where she almost kills her body with an eating disorder, because the mirror is actually showing a skinny person back to her, but she's seeing a fat person. We have distorted images of self all over the place that affect our race, but also affect us as individuals. All of the things that gave you a negative, limiting sense of self, be it parents, speaking to you in certain ways and telling you negative things about yourself, being critical, or being outright abusive. We all have parts of ourselves that need to heal. And one of the biggest core things is that keeps us as individuals and as a race floating around here feeling kind of lost and a bit overwhelmed by what the world has become is the fact of the core lies. We've been told, for instance, besides the fact that creation really has no purpose, or if it does, it's because there's some creator God up there whose standards are impossible to live up to anyway, so you kind of just give up before you even try, or that there's no purpose at all. That one's damaging enough. But then we're told some contradictory ones that are just outright confusing, where, okay, we're the most intelligent creation. We're the most intelligent species, supposedly, in the universe, because nothing else has been found to, show us something more intelligent. And at the same time, we are lowly, pathetic, and powerless. Where you get this, alter ego. I'm powerful, I'm not powerful. I'm powerful, I'm not powerful. We have been trained into duality of mind and of thinking. So this type of duality of mind and thinking, every thought you think is an energy form. Every energy form that runs through your body will create a chemical reaction in the body. And that chemical reaction will control how your brain and the things that give you the sensation of emotion, how they work. So every thought that we think, every belief that we hold, has a chemical reality in the DNA, in the brain, in the central nervous system, and in the body itself. We have been taught, one big lie, that death is normal. Now, if you accept that for numerous generations, and you keep seeing more and more evidence of that, sure enough, death becomes normal, and you forget that it isn't. What if we, as individuals, took the challenge and said, you know what? I'm going to choose and use my personal power right here, right now in this life to start choosing consciously the self I want to be. If I have an idea or a belief, I'm going to look at that for a minute. And just because it was taught to me, or the church says this, or my priest might get mad at me if I even question that, whatever. But I'm going to look at that and say, what does this idea lead me to feel about myself? Does it lead me to feel that I'm a good being and that I have great potential to do things, so I feel motivated to be a nice person and to want to move forward with my life? Or does it make me feel like not getting out of bed in the morning because why bother, it's hopeless? All the ideas that we hold, and some of them are consciously held, some of them are conscious, but more in what is called the emotional body level. So they appear a bit more subconscious, and they move things around from what we call the subconscious mind area. The information that this work paradigm that has come out since the year 2000, the information it brings here creates a whole new option of how you look at what is taking place around you. It doesn't say all of the other things are untrue. In fact, it plugs very well into certain parts of history that are known, into certain parts of science, and certain parts of spirituality that are known. And then it shows where they were meant to fit together. So it is a paradigm. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you understand that, or you wouldn't still be with us for a while. You would have left. Those of you who are new to the work, it can seem overwhelming. If you look at the website, say, how many products are there? Oh my God, where do you start? We're still working on that one as far as where's the easiest place to start. And we're hoping that this workshop set will be one of them, where it is a place where, whether you're new to the work or whether you've been with it for a while, you can use it as a start, because it'll give you a framework of some of the highest level information, but in a format that will help it make sense in relation to the world that you live in and how you can use it to make a positive change in your personal lives and in your destiny. Now, you do have the ability to affect your destiny, not just your destiny on earth, but where you go after here. That's one of the things you're not taught in the belief paradigms that are on this planet right now. You're taught, if lucky, you die, and then you have a spirit that goes someplace else, hopefully nice. And a lot of people at least hold on to that, because it's better than what science teaches you. Well, sun's going to explode someday and we're all gone. Purposeless end, just like we had a purposeless beginning, so just have fun in the middle tends to be the message of science. Because if there's no purpose in creation and there's no purpose in discreation, you might as well just enjoy the space in between. And it means there's no rules except for the rules of physics and those kind of things. What we've shown in the work, and what we've been shown by the work, because we have been learning this too, we were sleepers too. We have some, both of us have different experiences, and Mac does also. But this has been a wake-up journey for us as well. We have learned some amazing things that by the end of 7 years, the ability to have completely redefined your understanding of yourself, and you look back and realize how tiny you felt you were then. It just the little tiny limited self-concept you had. 7 years later, with understanding the things, even some of the hard things that weren't fun to learn, you're just huge. Because one of the biggest things you can get from this work is to recognize, A, yes, a God does exist. B, it isn't a gender God. We are created in the image of God as pure consciousness. And first and foremost, you are pure consciousness. Your body is a manifestation of that consciousness in which you use in order to walk around and experience a manifest world. You can start to realize you are a cosmic being, and you were created that way from the beginning. It implies that before you met mom and dad in the fetus pattern, that you were somebody that has a history, a meaning, and a purpose. It implies you came here for a reason. It implies, if you have one, you can probably try to remember what it is. It also implies that as far as purpose for life and motivation for waking up in the morning and pointing yourself forward and go, is not just to be able to put a roof over your head. It's not just to be able to maybe get a nicer roof over your head or to feed yourselves. Yes, you have to do those things while you're on this planet in a body. But there is something that there are many, many races of beings out there that we refer to collectively as the Christic eternal life races, who already know and live this. There are places that are completely the expression in manifestation of the utopian vision. They are beyond democratic, right? Which doesn't mean like autocratic, somebody telling you what to do. They rely on Christic principles of natural harmony, where individuals are respected and the collective is respected. These are actually places that exist, that can be mapped. And we have, with this work, we have been given the information when we were given the echo maps of the God World gates. You had to understand a bit about cosmic structure before you could understand what kind of maps were used to find things within that structure, so you could find where you were on your little planet Earth in that structure. They showed us that. They've shown us where they are in relation to that. And I refer to the they who communicate with us. They communicate with us through a process that is not channeling. It is a process that is called chelantic crystalline transmission. It is a wave transmission. It is not channeling where something else comes into your body and uses your mouth. In fact, we suggest not to do that unless you'd like something to take your body and not give it back. So the information has been huge. And it gives us a potential. And as always, you can take it or leave it. There's no pressure to take it. We are not pumping fear that, you have to believe this or horrible things will happen. Horrible things are already happening. They've been happening since Atlantis. We've been dying. Our planet has been dying. I mean, the scare tactics, if we're looking at the world around you isn't enough to scare you, we're not going to bother trying to scare you more. We're not trying to bring material or information to people that makes them do anything. All right. What we hope most when we give a workshop is that it will give you ideas to think about and to consider and to ask, what if this is true?
Because when you see the paradigm of creation that this work stands for, if these things are true, the universe is a wonderful place to be. And if these things are true, what makes this earth such a difficult and often painful place to be is not the natural state, and some of that can be fixed. What this work gives is genuine hope, not hope built on blind faith. More than any paradigm, this work shows where spirituality and science go hand in hand and always did. Some of this work is very scientific. Quantum mechanics. We teach you of particle, particle, and particum, the specific quantums of energy that they have, the different types of energy they have, how they set creation in motion. And we teach how they are an aspect of the consciousness of God's source. One of the most precious things that is taught in this paradigm is context. Your context, Earth's context, in relation to this mysterious potential quality being called God. We are taught that we exist within the consciousness field of God's source. That even in the worst of what we call falls, where you become completely oblivious to the fact that you are connected to anything, it doesn't change the fact that all manifest creation occurs within the consciousness body of God's source, the unified field of consciousness. That means God is with every molecule, every atom, every quark, every spark, every little bit of everything, and every large bit of everything. God is not somewhere far away. God is with us, around us. We are made of God's stuff. And if we can realize that, and also that the little tiny self-images of God that we are taught in the religions, who have distorted our understanding of the nature of our source. If we can understand that yes, we do have a loving God source. It is alive, it is eternal. We were created in the image of that God source. And that doesn't mean the physical part of us. That is a product of the rest. We ourselves are consciousness fields first. Littler ones that live within the larger one that is God's source consciousness. We can have immediate and direct communication with God's source. We don't have to go through a hierarchy of priests and all sorts of things to speak with God. But what we do need to do is clear out certain things in the DNA that allow other things that are not God, that are from elsewhere, to communicate false information to us. That's why we don't recommend channeling right off the bat. Opening to be able to hear your direct personal connection to God is the most precious thing anyone can have. And you don't need a re-legion to do it. But you have to reset the original legion back into your DNA. You have the keys to your freedom right in your DNA, in what's called the junk DNA. The junk DNA are those little pieces of the DNA and genes that are still floating around someplace in the DNA but don't appear to be, they're not coding for protein, so they're not turned on in the DNA. That's not junk. That junk was part of the result of the electromagnetic distortions in Earth's planetary fields that I had mentioned earlier. And what those distortions did was literally shred parts of the DNA and create unnatural sequences of genes. And there were problems before Atlantis. This is the third seeding of our race here. There were 2 others before that failed, where the race was wiped out and had to be seeded again. We are the last of the seedings. There will not be a 4th seeding. Because we're in an amazing period of time right now, because we don't have our history records here anymore, the Atlantean records, because much of this was recorded in Atlantis as far as the history of the human race, where it came from. And it also went into galactic history and where other things came from, and universal history. Once those records were taken away, our sense of context really shrunk, where we became very short-sighted and we have tunnel vision. We don't remember we're part of a universal community. So we think we're alone on this planet. We have no memory of the fact that visitors have been here, come and gone, and are still here, some of them, for a long time. This is part of our history. We don't have, and this is almost merciful, a direct memory of some of the things we've had to bring back the records on that have to do with Atlantis, abuse of technologies that were referred to as the blank slate technologies, or for short, the beast machine, that were used to create to create the electromagnetic distortions that caused the DNA mutation in the first place, but they were also used to create other horrific things. We will find, as we proceed in the work this weekend, we'll talk about something called the vertical maps, which are exciting. The vertical maps have to do with finding where the Christic races are, where these utopian type places exist, and access to them is much closer than we think. There is something that's referred to as Ascension Earth, and that's where we have lots of friends, and we are going to learn how to eventually slide there and actually experience it. But we'll also learn there is something called hibernation zones. Hibernation zones are reverse spin light fields that create reverse particle spin matter fields. They are also inhabited. They are connected to the black hole technologies that we've talked about from the Atlantean period. And it's not that we're just going over and over old history. The old history needed to be understood so you'd understand what is happening today and where it came from. Because right now we live under something called the nets, the Nibiruan electrostatic transduction fields. They hang in our atmosphere. They're specific types of frequency nets that keep the DNA block locked in. What most people have no concept about on this planet right now is this place has been being run as a prison planet since Atlantis period, 9558 BC. And there is also a good part to that story. We're about to make a prison break. And a prison break doesn't have to involve fights and guns and all those kind of things. And it's especially difficult to use that approach when you can't see those who are keeping you imprisoned. And when they've somehow managed to turn your own planet's energy fields into the means by which your DNA imprisons you. What's needed here is healing. And that is what the prison break is about. There is still a part of what would be considered the Earth's body that is referred to as Ascension Earth. Ascension Earth, you will find when we go through the vertical maps. We call them vertical because if you're standing on Earth and you draw a line through yourself all the way down to the core of Earth, and then draw another line right through yourself, way up and outside, way up to the magnetosphere surrounding Earth, right? You have all these layers. First you have we have the surface, the crust that we're standing on. Then you have the immediate atmosphere. And then you have layers of atmosphere. You've got the Van Allen radiation belts going up there and all that kind of stuff. Well, what you're not taught in the science books here is that there are different planes that interface going up from the atmosphere up, but also going down. It means there are certain planes that exist with Earth at a different angular rotation of particle spin that are physical, just like ours. Some of those planes are free, and some of them are not. The ones that are not are referred to as the hibernation zones, and they are run by visitors, and the visitors have been here for a long time. We think visitors from other places don't exist. That's a laugh. It's going to be quite the surprise on this planet once that little bubble's broken. Because we have hibernation zones and other places that visitors have been here all along, monitoring and directing the evolution of the nurseries on the prison planet. We are the nurseries on the prison planet. There's also, fortunately, places in those vertical maps that are connected to what is referred to as the Ascension Earth, and a place called Eartha. And Eartha is a fully natural planet. It is is sort of a part of Earth. It's actually larger than Earth. Earth is a smaller part of it. We'll discuss that more when we look at structure, because if you don't understand structure, as far as what is something shaped like, how does it relate to what's next to it, how does that relate to the consciousness field of God's source, to the echomaps, where I am on the echomaps and where I am sitting in my living room. Okay, to give you context, this is why they have painstakingly given us the structure. They've shown us light body structure. They've shown us the echomaps of the God gate structure. They've shown us Catharic grid structure, radio body structure. Then they've shown us Rasha body structure, which are the dark matter template structure. And then they've taken us into spirit body structure. So we have an idea of where parts are and how they're supposed to work together. So we will cover structure, but in a way that it makes it really fast. We finally have, from creation 1 right through to give you the gist of structure. So once you've got the understanding of how things fit together, when we say to you that when you go up into our atmosphere to the layer of, say, Van Allen belt number 1, and I don't have them memorized yet, but I have that information because somebody actually looked them up for me. How many miles or kilometers up does the Van Allen inner belt begin? Science here knows those numbers, right? They found those numbers. Now, we have been shown material that shows what specific planes interface in the atmosphere in relation to the natural structure of what's called the dark matter templates, or Rasha body structures of a planet. And because of that, we can put in those structures where exactly the Van Allen radiation belts fit, so we can tell where those planes and those other worlds, manifest worlds, that are accessible directly from our atmosphere and our planet are. One of the most exciting things I find about this work, and one of the things that I hope I can convey my excitement for, and probably a lot of other people who've heard this part of the work, is the fact that it's natural for us to be able to be an eternal life species that has the ability to manifest and demanifest at will, to move from this space-time location to others without having to use spaceships, simply by turning into light and remanifesting in the designated location you wanted to go to. The first part of learning how to do this and getting the genetic capacity back to reawaken the DNA to do this is called gliding. When we do journeys, meditation journeys is a very simple word. These are projection journeys that help to begin turning on the DNA parts that will allow you to first take a portion of your natural consciousness and a portion of your body out into what is called a glide or a projection. So we can first get our consciousness to some of these other safe spaces that are the close ones, the ones that are literally in our atmosphere. After a bit of working with glide technology, the next stage in evolution in getting our capacity of eternal life, human nature back, is to slide. Slide means you can take your body through gates. We can't right now. We'd actually vaporize attempting to go through a gate biologically because of the mutation held in the body. This work has painstakingly, over the last 7 years, brought techniques in that progressively assist in healing various portions of the energy body structure and the DNA structure, its templates and its overlays, so we could get to the point where we could finally learn to slide. We have just gone through, in fact, a large activation that took place in the Tribes 8 class that will allow very rapid slideability for many, many people. It means the DNA awakening will occur. This has to do with something called the Hall of Records and the Akashic Record. Now, those words have been thrown around for a long time. There's all sorts of New Age stuff on them. There's bits of stuff from the ancient past that mention halls of records and tunnels beneath the Sphinx and all this kind of thing. Voyagers, Volume 2, talked a little bit about the halls of records. There's a whole set of structures that's important to understand if you're going to understand the significance of what halls of records are and what they're connected to. You have an Akashic record that is connected to halls of records that are connected to what are called the Illyrian chambers. And the Illyrian chambers are connected to absolute organic natural magic, your connection to the rest of the cosmos. So a planet or a stellar body or a sun has sets of things called halls of records and Illyrian chambers and an Akashic record. We're going to learn a portion of what is called spirit body anatomy in general in the cosmic creation sequence, because once you understand that, it will make sense to you when we talk about the Illyrian chambers of a planet or the hall of records of a planet. So we're going to learn the secrets about the halls of records. All of these bits of information come together to tell us one thing. We can do several things right now to begin healing our natural biological ability to take our bodies with us, to begin to, first of all, slow the unnatural aging process of the bodies. Then, once you get to a certain level of DNA healing, you would be able to stop the aging process. And then for some of us, and not everybody will be able to make it with this, but some people will, to actually begin reversing it back to what is called the prime age. Now, we refer to it as the prime age simply because there is a natural way, the evolution of any body, be it a body of a planet, a body of a solar system, or a body of a person, is supposed to evolve. From the point of fertilization, when in humans, when an egg and sperm come together, a whole set of things unfold from that point. And if they go naturally, there's a specific cycle of integration of frequencies that involves the integration of what's called the incarnate level of identity, or the density 1 identity, the soul identity at density 2, the oversoul at density 3, the avatar identity at density 4, and the rishi identity at density 5. That process, you should have avatar integration by the age of 33. And the age of 33 is a fascinating age, because that is the age where, in the maturation of a body form, where the spirit comes in at fetal integration while it's in the womb, and then comes and grows the body outward, gets itself fully into the body, that is a point where we reach what is called the starfire point. A starfire cycle is a natural turnaround cycle where the re-spiritualization and de-densification of the atomic matter structure of the body would naturally occur and take us into what are called the Adashi return cycles. These are the ascension cycles home. There's a specific format, for those of you who don't know. There are specific structures of spirit body, light body, and manifest body anatomy that all connect with these natural cosmic structures of space-time. We should naturally be able to become what is called an Adashi master at the age of 33. And whatever your body form looks like at that age would be what it took into its eternal life state, should you want to have it. But that's also the body. You could shapeshift into anything else you wanted to. You could make it turn into light. You could make it turn into sound. You could manifest it, demanifest it, move it all over the place. There's a whole natural creation cycle that we will look at. And we finally got to the end. We've known that there are 4 yuga cycles of expansion. Now, we've heard some people have heard the word yuga before, where you have the yuga cycles talked about. I think they were connected with the Mayan calendar as well as with the Sanskrit teachings. And we explain what they are, and it's actually E-yuga with an E on the front before the Y. And you have 4 expansion cycles called yugas, and then you have 3 what are called Adashi cycles, which are after the starfire turnaround in angular rotation of particle spin, where the spirit body integrates, and there are 3 cycles of completely expanding back into the hugeness that yourself is before it steps itself down into a little tiny fetal pattern, to enter a new incarnation. But after that, there is a series of cycles of things that eventually a being becomes what is called Christed, or a Christ star being. The Christed being is what the Christian teachings have actually tried to preserve pieces of, but they took out all the mechanics. They just say, do this, do that, say, a few Hail Marys here if it's in the Catholic version, say, a few of the other ones in the Protestant version, and hope your priest or your minister knows how to get you there. Well, do you think they'd still be here if they did? They don't know either. Even when people who have a deep spiritual calling, go to become priests or ministers and those kind of things, they're very sincere people usually. They very much want to help others, and they feel that the love of spirit and the wanting to know spirit and be close to God. So they're doing the best they can, but they're doing the best they can with altered texts that contain lies that were put there intentionally by certain groups from Atlantis. There are certain ones who still have their enough DNA turned on where they do remember the records. So we're in the middle of an amazingly huge story. What for me meant so much was when they told us the most recent information about our connection, not just Earth and the solar system and the problems Earth has been having. We've talked about our 15-dimensional matrix, there's 12 major stargates in our 15-dimensional matrix, and all that thing. But they've not talked much about our Milky Way. And now we've got spacecraft that are going out, and we're getting, all sorts of space images coming back. Our science is evolving to the point where it can bring us pictures of galaxies and things that are out there. And we're in this pretty little spiral galaxy called the Milky Way. There is a whole history that is attached here. And what is fascinating is we've talked about in our work, they've given the concepts of where home can be. Home can be wherever you are, because source is wherever you are, the God source consciousness field. But our races, angelic humans, came from somewhere. They didn't start on Earth, because Earth didn't start on Earth. Earth was a part of a particular set of celestial events that took place in density 2 that in the Voyager's book was described as the fall of Tara. Tara Alcyone, the star Alcyone that is seen up there, underwent a trauma, and in that trauma, portions of itself were literally blown off. Those portions, because they were worked with under what is called a host mission by the beloveds, the Christic races, worked to bring them together to create a new little seed solar system that would allow for the evolution of those pieces of Terra to return back into their natural pattern. That is where our solar system came from. There is history that has to do with things that happened about 4.6 billion years ago. Yeah, our sun is around that age. That's when certain things happened before the fall from Terra, where actually Alcyone formed. Our sun was part of the Alcyone system, the Alcyone-Terra system. Now this is all connected to the Milky Way, and they finally have showed us some fascinating things that we'll see on day 2 about our relationship to the Milky Way galaxy that they tell us our little solar system is in one of the outer arms of, and what that has to do with M31, which is another galaxy, literally a different galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy. And what is really neat is by the end of that with all the things we've talked about home and where we might have come from, and it might be Sirius B out there somewhere, it might be, we can look up in the sky and see our home. And it is there to observe. And we will also be shown a certain set of gate interfaces that occur, that we are going to be taught first how they work and how to work with our bodies through first glide and then slide, where we can begin the process of regenerating within our bodies the ability to physically move through a natural stargate and to experience what in simple terms can be referred to as the ascension matrix that is connected to the Milky Way galaxy. The ascension matrix connected to the Milky Way galaxy is called the Aquiel matrix. And this has to do with, believe it or not, Joshua 12 and the Christ story and what took place there. And it has something to do with the 7th hidden line of J12. In the Voyager's books, we'd mentioned that there were 6 lines. I believe it's in there somewhere, 6 different lines. He had taken, well, he didn't really take on 6 wives. There were 6 couples appointed, and he did father the children of each of those women, where there was an adoptive father appointed from the beginning to seed the lines before he left. Jesus did not die. All right? He did not get crucified. That was our hobby, and that was staged to get the local heat off of both of the Jeshuas. There were 2 Jeshuas, and they were not brothers. Jeshua 12 was the actual avatar being who brought, the 12th level avatar, who brought the teachings of the Christ here. He left here in 27 AD. He left through a process called resurrection that has to do with a natural process called raising the Iridanis. We'll find out what that is about too when we find out about some of the structures of the spirit body in relation to the light body and the matter body. But Jeshua left in 27 AD. He went out through Giza, all right, Giza in Egypt, because they were the only set of gates that were opened at the time that you could get someone out into the Aquiel matrix. Now, all of this information is really huge. And if we were in a different type of earthly drama, the Christ beloveds would have waited a much longer time before telling us some of the bigger stuff, because it's really hard to keep up with, particularly when it gets most of the important stuff gets thrown at you in 1 year, since January of 2007. The reason now is the time to start looking at this information and to start just asking the question, what if this is true? Maybe I can use some of these ideas even if I don't accept the whole paradigm. It's important now because there are 223 years left as of 2007 for the ascension gates to remain open. After that point, because something that finally occurred in the spring of this year, this system has lost its ascension status. It is running what is called host ascension for the next 223 years, at which point all of the ascension gates will close and whatever life field is left here will go into what is called a fall, which is a black hole fall, which is your sun eventually dies and does red giant and eventually novas if it's large enough, and a dying solar system. Now, the information that they have been giving us recently has to do with certain things that have happened in the larger drama that was part of the Atlantean drama, that has to do not just with Earth, but with our sun. On March 25th of 2007, something happened to our sun. Science doesn't know about it yet. They may start to know as early as spring of 2008, when the first gamma ring burst comes off. It may be small. The first one will be small. They will progressively get stronger. These gamma ring bursts of the sun that I'm speaking of have to do with a condition that occurred on the 25th of March of 2007. And that is called the prana seed inside of the sun closed. Now, if you don't know what a prana seed is, that's not going to mean much. Prana seed represent the core gates. Prana seed has to do with what is called the Rasha body and Rasha body anatomy. And it has to do with the sun's ability to continually generate fuel or not. When the prana seed closes, a sun enters what is called the Bardo cycle. That is the death cycle. Our sun, if it weren't for the events that built up to what happened in this past spring, our sun would have had millions of years left of its natural fuel before it encountered a natural point of Bardo. And it would only be natural if certain things couldn't have been fixed within the solar body itself. So it could, suns aren't supposed to die either. Stars aren't supposed to die. They're supposed to star fire, which means they literally pop off and pop up in the Adashi return cycles at a different angular rotation and particle spin. They appear to have disappeared, but they didn't just go boom and leave a mess behind. Right? Our sun had the potential of being an ascension, an ascension sun, which means the Amenti system, which is our solar system, had the potential of being an ascension solar system. That was what it had been created to be. But when the prana seed in a sun closes, it can't be forced open again without exploding the sun, which wipes out very quickly the entire solar system connected to it and turns everything to space dust very fast. All right. When the Bardo cycle of a sun starts, there are a set of things called ring waves. There are 15 ring waves that will happen. And this has to do with when the dark matter template, called the Rasha template of the sun, separates from the light body matter structure of the sun. One Jaleesic ring at a time, and there are 15 Jaleesic rings that separate. We'll find this stuff out when you see the Rasha body anatomy. It shows you generally what a Rasha body is, and then you can understand what it has to do with suns and with ring waves. So we're moving into a cycle right now that if it weren't for all the help that's already being given here by the Christic races and through the Aquiel Ascension Matrix, if they weren't assisting us, we would be, they said within 50 years, the radiation increase coming from the sun would have killed all of the life forms here anyway. There would have been 50 years tops, and everybody would have been getting sicker, and new diseases will be waking up, and ancient diseases will be coming back, and things like that, because the radiation is going to change. It's already been changing, but it's going to change in a larger way. There are buffer fields that are being run right now through Stargate structures on this planet that connect into the Milky Way, that connect into what's called the Aquiel matrix, and into several other what are called hosting matrices. Because of those, there's a transmutation screen that allows for some of that radiation to be diverted so it is not assaulting Earth the way it will. They have still said we may, it's almost when we watch, it'll be somewhere in the end of May 2008, when the first ring wave releases, which is the weakest one, whether or not that's noticeable. They're almost going to use that as a gauge to see how severe the others might be, to see how well the transmutation screen is working, and if it needs to be amped, because it could be something where it's not even noticeable. It could pop up as a little solar storm. It could pop up as something big enough that it wipes out satellite communication for a few days. All right? They're not worried about it being, so large that it's going to fry everybody, and we're not going to have to talk about anything after that. It's not going to be that, so you don't have to be afraid that the sun's going to do something really crazy. Not yet. We have about 223 years left here under this host with the assistance that we're being given on this planet to get our bodies where we can slide and actually assist a portion of the Earth's grids to also be able to slide into a different angular rotation of particle spin back into its natural alignment with the cosmos. And we'll see a bit more of what that means and what that has to do with M31, because it has everything to do with M31. So to have 2 days to be with you and try to explain this never-ending story is quite a challenge. What I'm going to do when I go back up, and Naz will be assisting me with this too, we will be getting the sequence for the first part of the program that has to do with this. Okay, we'll be doing the seeds of creation, the never-ending story. That is kind of in a nutshell. How is it that creation works? Okay, we've got God consciousness field, and then there was a particle. How'd that get there? All right, we're going to see a way of sequencing that material that many of you have seen before or seen pieces of before. We'll be able to see how to sequence it in a way that it just tells the creation story beautifully, and it makes sense, and it's easy enough, but also complex enough. The creation is fascinating, actually. Creation is much simpler than science makes it out to be, and a bit more complex than religion makes it out to be. It's somewhere in between. So, and you can take as much detail as you want and make it as complex as you want, or you can take the most important detail of both the spiritual parts of it and the science part of it, so you can see where they sit together and bring it home, where you can say, okay, and we're here now, and that means, oh yeah, that's cool. Because one thing that just this part alone will do, the first part, is to give you a really quick choice, an alternative way to look at yourself in relation to universe, cosmos, where we have been raised in the lies of Atlantis and the lies of Lemuria as well, the lies of our fathers and our mothers. And I'm not blaming your biological parents. I'm talking about Atlantis and Lemuria. It will give us an alternative view that actually makes more sense than any of the lies that are in polarity, religion versus science, all that kind of stuff. It shows where they fit together, where they're supposed to fit together, how you fit within that, and why this is a good thing. Because it brings you right back home to your relationship to God's source consciousness and to the fact that you have this amazing form. You've been taught a lie here that when you look in the mirror, that is what you are. And that thing that you see is what creates your consciousness. It's the other way around. You are created in the image of God's source. You are an energy field that is beautifully, intricately structured. It is the most amazing structure. Cosmic structure is amazing. And each one of us are a mini cosmos. We have the same light body structure. We have the same dark matter template structure. And it is through, and spirit body structure, it is through those structures that our physical body is directly connected to the manifest body of God's source and to the cosmic consciousness field of God's source at all times. If we have blockages in the DNA, we have blockages in energy that don't allow those natural currents of energy to flow into our bodies. So we are not able to hold the consciousness that those energies that we are made of would carry. So we feel lost, and we have a little bit of ourselves here, and the rest is still with us. And the idea is to turn it back on. Ascension isn't about exactly jumping out vertically. It's about expanding back into the wholeness that you actually are. Because to come out as an individuated aspect of Source, an individual spark or face of God that each one of us are created as, it requires a certain pattern. There's a certain first creation pattern that everything that goes from the completely at one with Source, not manifest at all state, into still one with Source, but in a manifest space-time hologram, it is a very specific framework. That framework is shown to you in understanding the seeds of creation and the first creation cycles and how they fit together. It also is where we get into understanding the Akashi expansion and Adashi return cycles, because you're not really going to understand anything about ascension unless you understand what an Adashi return cycle is. And you won't be able to understand an Adashi return cycle unless you understand spiritual body structure as well as light body structure and matter body structure. So there's a whole sequence of information that, if it's sequenced in the right way, we should be able to get that whole thing taken care of pretty quickly, compared to the fact that it took us like a whole year to get most of this through in the first place, piece by piece in each workshop. This is the first one where they'll be put in together and in this format and taken in to larger things. In the second, the PM session, we will do the Atlantean legacy, human evolution, and starfire potential. It includes the Adashi Temple's access key journey. And this is a journey that we have done in other workshops, but we have not done it here. And because there are so many new people here, an access key journey, these are what I had referred to before as the glides, all right? Where you actually learn to take your Rasha body out, move your Rasha body out with your consciousness in it, and go to visit these places that are in the ascension system. The first way to begin the process of healing your body, your physical body, so it can go too, is to first get a portion of the consciousness out with the dark matter template Rasha body. And you can go and experience these journeys. They'd be like meditations for now. And you can meet what we call the Adashi Masters. The Adashi Masters, they don't actually like the term masters because there's too much abuse of that term of ascended masters down here, and they really don't like that. They are simply people who have gone through the starfire process and become Christed. They understand what it is, they teach it, and they are guardians of what are called the Adashi temples. The Adashi temples can be accessed directly through Earth's atmosphere, and some portions of them through what's down underground. So we're going to learn all about that. We will do this journey because by doing the journey, you actually will pick up certain frequencies, will wake up that are already in your DNA, but they're asleep. They will wake up and in your biosystems that will begin the regenesis process, and progressively the journeys will become more and more real, and eventually you will develop the ability to slide. And slide is the ability to where the cells that and the molecules that your body are made out of, the atoms that your body is made out of, can undergo a shift in angular rotation of particle spin into the natural angular rotation of particle spin that the ascension systems exist on. Right now we're trapped in an unnatural angular rotation of particle spin because of something that's referred to as the false memory matrix that is here. It is like a falsely implanted Akashic record memory crystal that is not the real memory. And it's not just memory about who we were. It's memory about what cells are supposed to do and what DNA is supposed to do. This is called the Procyon matrix. The Procyon matrix is fascinating, and we'll find out about what that's about on Sunday. And this was new material that was just given in Tribes 8 class. So the Procyon matrix has to do with a piece of history that we didn't know about before, and that has to do with the fall of something called Proteus. And we'll find out about what that is too. So when we get into our Atlantean legacy, human evolution, our starfire potential means our ascension potential. Do we have the ability to biologically engage starfire, natural starfire again, so we can make the angular rotation of particle spin shift that will take us into the natural space-time cycles that have to do with the return cycles going back into God Source Center? Because we expand out, we're still in God Source consciousness field, but from the center of God Source consciousness field, we move outward into the space-time hologram and then move back in. The move back in is the Adashi return cycle. So we'll find out about what potential we have here. Because of things that have happened recently, we have much more potential than we even did 6 months ago. As far as, yes, we are now, as of March 25th, 2007, in a dying solar system. All right, there's a period of time. The sun's not going to explode tomorrow. It's not going to explode in 223 years. In fact, it'll be a very long time before space does return, but it will. And what that means is we have 223 years left for ascension gates to stay open. Other than that, this will become its own black hole system. And eventually, the particle dust of that black hole will go back home through a natural, larger, universal level starfire cycle whenever that larger cycle takes place. And the life field here will be long gone from here by then, one way or the other. It will either be gone through extinction or it will be gone through ascension. And that's what we were looking at now, a 223-year window left to very quickly help ourselves wake up to get our bodies healed enough. And if we can't get our bodies healed enough, you can at least know how to bardo well, which is to get yourself, your consciousness and your spirit, out of a body that you can't finish transmuting, and how to do that. So there are processes of dying well if you can't fully transmute, and there are processes of dying well and getting where you want to go and not falling into a hibernation zone and that kind of thing, because there are places you really don't want to go when you leave a body, right? And there's places you really don't want to go, even if you can take your body with you, you don't want to go there. We've referred to them as hibernation zones. So we will learn about these things, what potential we have right now, and what's the most important thing we can do with ourselves in order to be a part of what is conscious evolution on this planet. Because right now, most people are evolving unconsciously, completely by rote, just, the sins of the fathers, generation after generation. We just point ourselves forward, we do our little things, we have our little self-images, our little self-concepts. Never think about big things, like cosmic stuff, like cosmic neighbors. Some of us do. Our scientists like to think about, there must be life out there someplace. And a lot of our religious people like to think, I know there's a God in heaven somewhere. That at least gives us a sense of community besides here. But it's much, much bigger than that. If we can start to realize the potential and how we can access it, we will meet in this journey. We will make our first projection encounter with the what are called the Aquafarian races of the Adashi temples of Eartha. And it is a very special journey. There are other journeys that we will get to. This one has been done also in other groups. It is one of the most precious journeys, and it opens some of the most core portions of your own natural flows to your own core spirit body. It is one of the most important ones because of that. And it is those core flows turning back on in your Rasha body and your light body that brings more of that frequency into the matter body and the DNA for accelerated regenesis of the DNA. And it's a really neat journey to take too. When we get down here into day 2, we have seeds of suffering and the finally ending story. And the finally ending story has to do with the story we've not liked having to tell. As we were telling all the wonderful things about how the cosmos works that the beloveds have shared with us that are really exciting and really just, make you beam with like rays of hope when you really